During the mid-1990s, Canadian-based company bre-x Minerals claimed to have a few hundred million ounces of gold on Borneo Island in Indonesia. After a massive modern-day gold rush, it was discovered to be a hoax.
The story of Filipino geologist Michael de Guzman is unbelievably wild. This guy tricked financial experts, scientists, and engineers. He founded a company, put it on stock exchanges, and its value soared to over $6 billion. Once his plan succeeded, he sold everything, ran away from the country, and faked his own death. But here's the big question. How did he make everyone think there was a gold mine where there was none? And how did he make them believe he was dead? Brace yourself, because this story is full of twists and turns. Let's dive into the shocking tale of Michael de Guzman and his fake company. Michael was a smart guy who led a regular life. He studied hard and did really well in school, earning an engineering degree. Later on, he became a geologist. After finishing his studies, he went to Indonesia and worked there for a long time. Michael had a big dream. He wanted to work for one of the world's biggest mining companies. But it was tough for Filipinos to get top jobs in those companies, even if they were super qualified. Now, Michael wasn't happy with how things were going. He felt stuck and frustrated, like when you work really hard but don't get what you deserve. But Michael was different. He had a sneaky plan brewing in his mind. You see, many people were hunting for gold on Busang Island in Indonesia, where Michael worked. So he often went into the forest there to explore and look for gold. Finding a gold mine was the ultimate dream for him and others in his line of work, but it needed tons of stuff, like expensive gear, machinery, loads of money, time, and crazy effort. While most people exploring the forests were just looking for bits of gold, Michael had a different idea. As he roamed the forests, he thought hard. He thought, if I can't find a gold mine, why not create one and get rich like all those successful gold hunters? You see, Michael had a special skill. When he talked about something, he could make you believe in it too, no matter how crazy it sounded. This skill would come in handy for his wild plans. Plus, it helped that Busang Island in Indonesia was known for having lots of gold mines. Michael knew that volcanic areas like this were perfect for finding gold. Once Michael had his big idea, he needed someone to help him make it happen. Being Filipino, he knew convincing people to believe in him would be hard. So, he looked for the right person to join him in his scheme. That's when he thought of his friend John Felderhoff, a geologist who loved mining and gold, just like Michael. John had always dreamed of finding a gold mine and getting super rich from it. Plus, he had a great reputation in the mining world and was well respected. Michael knew John would be on board with his plan. When he shared the idea with John, he was thrilled, and they immediately started working out the details to pull off their scheme. To kick off their plan, Michael and John bought land on Busang Island. Then they needed a daring businessman who would help them promote the company, but also someone who would only ask a few questions. They thought of David Walsh, a Canadian businessman like John and a stock trader. They agreed he'd be the perfect partner, but they kept their real plan hidden from him. David's role was to promote the project and attract investor attention, all while being kept in the dark about the truth. As we dive deeper, you'll learn more about how their operation unfolded. So, Michael, John, and David, the businessman, all met up in Jakarta, Indonesia. David was visiting Indonesia to learn about mining and wanted to get into that sector. During their meeting, Michael told David about a gold mine project they are working on in Busang Island. They painted a bright picture of the future, saying they could turn this project into a company that would make them loads of money. They decided that Michael and John would handle mining the gold, while David's role was to promote the company so that more people would know about it and invest their money with them. After convincing David, the three of them became official partners, so we had the first partner, Michael de Guzman, the mastermind behind the scam. The second partner was the geologist John Felderhoff. The third partner was the Canadian businessman David Walsh. After their agreement, the three of them founded a company called bre-x and listed it on the Canadian stock market. During this time, Michael started employing workers only from the Philippines. The reason is that he could always control them and give them instructions. He left the digging and mining tasks to the workers. The first thing he did was order them to dig a sample from the rocks in one of the forests on Busang Island and extract it from the supposed gold mine. But of course, there was no gold in it. After digging, they split the rock in half. One part they kept hidden, just in case experts wanted to check it later. Michael knew if they found nothing, his scam would be exposed. The other half was broken into pieces and sent to a lab for testing. Michael knew it had no gold, so he did a sneaky trick called salting. This meant he sprinkled a bit of real gold onto the rocks. He even took the gold from his wedding ring and used a magnifying glass to make sure it looked real. Now, you'd think experts in the lab would catch this trick, but Michael was an expert. He added just the right amount of real gold to make it believable. He sent it off knowing he was taking a huge risk, but then, to his surprise, the lab results came back saying the samples were good. Michael couldn't believe it. Just like that, with his clever trick, he made them think he found a gold mine. The lab experts made a big mistake. They only checked one half of the rock and missed to checking the second one. If they had looked at the second half, they would have known the samples were fake. After this, Michael got in touch with his partner John, who lived in Western Canada. He told John that the samples were accepted and things were ready to go. Following this plan, the company bre-x was listed on various stock exchanges. Word got out that bre-x discovered a gold mine on Busang Island. This news sounded great, and everyone believed they'd strike it rich with more gold. People began investing some of their money in the company's shares, although they were unsure about the new company's credibility. Michael needed more gold to keep up his trick of salting the samples. The first time, he used his wedding ring, but now he needed bigger amounts of gold. He planned to keep adding gold to the samples and sending them to the lab to keep fooling everyone. So, he figured out the best way to get gold was from the indigenous people in Indonesia who were experts in gold panning. Michael found the leader among them and started buying the gold he needed from them. Next, an auditor was sent to check the samples Michael had extracted and to confirm the gold in them. When asked about the intact half of the samples, Michael had prepared answers. He said that the gold in intact samples isn't always evenly spread out. One half might have gold, while the other might not. Then, Michael showed the broken half to the expert. He had added river gold to it, as we discussed earlier. The expert noticed the gold looked rounded, typical of river gold. But Michael explained it away, saying it was volcanic gold and always looked like that. After a thorough examination, the auditor found the quantity of gold in the sample to be natural, with no signs of fraud. So, he believed the samples were real and genuine. Let me explain something to you. I mentioned earlier that Michael was really good at tricking people. He could fool anyone who believed in him. When he talked to the auditor, he made himself look like the ultimate expert, like there was no one else as knowledgeable as him in this field. Also, it seems like the auditor was a beginner, not as experienced as Michael. After the successful deception, the auditor was convinced that the samples were indeed from a gold mine. 3 weeks later, the share price shot up from $20 to $30. Michael was pleased with this rise, but it wasn't his main goal. He had bigger plans in mind. Seeing the share price increase, Michael called David Walsh, their businessman partner, and told him that their mine had much more gold than expected. This got David even more excited. He applied to list their company on the NASDAQ stock exchange in America. This was the perfect moment for Michael to push forward with the scam. He continued to make everyone believe in the illusion, while his partner John Felderhoff boldly claimed that bre-x owned one of the world's biggest gold mines. This shocking news spread like wildfire, making bre-x a famous name overnight in Canada and America. After that, everyone started trying to buy and acquire shares in the company, from investors and analysts to ordinary people. The company's shares rose from $30 to $300, and the market value of the company reached $6 billion. Once the company's value hit $6 billion, Michael and John decided to sell some of their shares. They each sold shares worth $100 million. They were overjoyed, going from poor to suddenly becoming millionaires thanks to their deceitful company. Even though Michael became a millionaire, he kept on deceiving everyone, making them think the mine was thriving and gold was still being found. But lies don't last forever, and eventually, the truth comes out. Meanwhile, the Indonesian government was getting ready to reveal the truth about the company's deceit. When they realized what was going on, they were surprised. How could Indonesia have such a huge gold mine without the government even knowing about it? In 1996, the Indonesian government canceled bre-x's mining permit. They wanted to be partners in the mine and let other government-linked companies take over the mining operations. These companies were really excited about this chance. It was a big deal for them. At the same time, Michael found out that the drilling records would be audited by other mining companies. If this happened, his deception would be exposed, so he decided to destroy all the records, evidence, and samples. He said it was an accident. He thought that by getting rid of these proofs, it would be hard to uncover his fraud, and he could avoid getting caught. He hoped this would at least delay the investigation and give him time to figure out what to do next. The government pushed bre-x to accept their partner for mining. Once the state became a partner and got a share of the company, news spread and the company's value dropped from $6 billion to $5 billion. Michael was upset about this, but he didn't give up hope. He decided to deceive everyone again, just like he did before. His partner John publicly declared that they had made great progress during drilling. He said they found a lot more gold underground, claiming they had 57 million ounces of gold reserves, which then increased to 70 million ounces after starting mining operations. After this news, people and investors were shocked and started buying the company's shares intensively. People saw it as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. They believed that after investing their money and the share price rising, their profits would multiply. And indeed, the share price skyrocketed again after that. In 1997, Michael and his partners were invited as honorary guests to an annual meeting for bre-x shareholders in Toronto, Canada. At that time, Michael stood up and told them that the results they were getting from gold mining were fantastic, continuing to deceive them. At the same time, the government-linked mining company operating in the mine where Michael claimed to find gold was shocked. They discovered during drilling and sample extraction that there wasn't even a speck of gold in the samples. The project manager contacted Michael and told him they found no gold in the samples, and he asked him to return to Indonesia for an investigation. At this point, Michael knew he was about to be caught. The next day, the Indonesian government arranged a helicopter with a pilot from the Indonesian Air Force to take Michael to the investigation after his return from Canada. Michael got into the helicopter's rear compartment. While flying over the Indonesian forests at 400 feet, the pilot looked back and realized Michael was missing from the back of the helicopter. Michael had jumped out of the helicopter and vanished instantly. After 3 continuous days of searching for Michael in the forests, the Indonesian army announced that they had found his body. By that time, the body had decomposed completely due to the fall, and wild animals had eaten the remains. Did they find Michael's body? Investigations showed that the body they found was badly injured, and there was no proof it was Michael's. Plus, the first person who saw the body and told the police about it was one of the Filipinos who worked with Michael and helped search for him after he disappeared. The government mining company kept looking for gold in the mine, but they didn't find any at all. They checked the samples they took out, but the rocks didn't have any trace of gold in them. They figured out the tricks Michael de Guzman and John Felderhoff had used on them. They realized they'd been fooled and that there was no gold in the mine. They found out Michael had sprayed gold on the rocks to make them believe the mine was full of gold. When the news spread and the bre-x scandal came out, the company fell apart and the stock price crashed. All the money people had put into buying shares in the company disappeared in a flash. Some folks lost everything they owned because of this deception. It was so bad that some people even took their own lives after hearing the news. The first person who caught everyone's attention was the company's founder, David Walsh. However, he quickly stepped up and told everyone he had nothing to do with what happened. He made it clear that Michael and John were the ones responsible for the deception. David had no part in it, but proving this to people wasn't easy. After the scandal, David and his wife moved to the Bahamas, and he was in a very bad state. He was devastated by the loss he had suffered. Then there was a scary incident at his house in the Bahamas. 2 masked robbers broke in, tied him up, and threatened to shoot him if he didn't give them all the money he got from the company. Thankfully, the situation ended without violence. However, 3 weeks later, on June 4th, 1998, he passed away because of a brain aneurysm. As for the other fraudulent partner, John Felderhoff, after being exposed, he traveled to the Cayman Islands and there he bought a house in one of the finest areas. Since there were no extradition treaties with Canada, he was living peacefully. This way, Michael and his partner John completed the largest mining scam. After a year of investigations by the Canadian police, the case was closed without charging anyone due to Michael's death and the lack of evidence against John, who was only accused of insider trading. And that's the end of our story today. I hope you liked the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, and you can watch this video. And until the next one, ciao.